"You're fired. My daughter needs your position," my boss said as his daughter laughed. "Clean out your desk today." When I took out the company ownership documents, the entire board stood up. I have invested 10 important years of my life. But I said nothing and showed the file. My name is Carmen Lopez. I am 35 years old, and until this morning, I was the director of global technology operations at one of the largest software companies in the country. I say was because my boss, Richard Johnson, just fired me to give my position to his newly graduated daughter. For 10 years, I dedicated my life. I came to this company as a junior programmer. And I climbed positions thanks to my hard work and dedication. I was the architect behind our most successful security system, Betrayal, which is now used by banks all over the mainland. Richard used to praise my work, saying, "Carmen is the future of this company." In the company meetings with the board of directors, that was before his daughter Danielle decided she wanted my post. Danielle Johnson, 23 years old, recently graduated in business administration from a private university. Had been seen a few times at events, always with that look of superiority that only inherited money can give. This morning started like any other. I arrived early, as always, to review the reports of the night team. Maria, my assistant, received me with a worried expression. "Carmen, there are rumors that Danielle is going to join the company," she said. "I guess it will start somewhere in a junior position." I responded without looking up from my laptop. Maria bit her lip. "No, exactly," she said. Before I could elaborate, Richard entered my office without knocking. Behind him, Danielle smiled with malice. "Carmen, we need to talk," he said in an unusually cold tone. "Of course," I responded, closing my laptop. "About the new project expansion." I didn't interrupt. "No, it's about my new position," Richard clarified, clearing his throat. "Carmen, you have done an acceptable job these years, but the company needs new blood, fresh vision. Excuse me. Accuse, my Danielle will take your position as director of operations." I immediately stared at them, hoping it was a bad joke. "Richard, we are in the middle of the Tekel 2 implementation. My team has new ideas for the project," I said, but she interrupted. "More modern ideas." Danielle strutted around my office, touching my awards and certifications. "All this can be packed today." "I really want to redecorate," she added. "Richard," I said, keeping calm, "Danielle has no experience in software development. This is a critical banking security system. A mistake. Couldn't you question me?" Richard burst out. "The decision is made. You are fired." Daddy Danielle intervened. "With a honeyed voice, we can also change the development team. Its methods are so outdated." Richard nodded. "Of course, Princess. You will make the changes we consider necessary." "This is a mistake," I said, standing up. "Not only is it unfair, it is dangerous for the company." "The only thing dangerous here is your attitude," he replied. "Danielle, do you know how many connections I have in the technological world? My boyfriend is an influencer in technology." I had to hold back a hysterical laugh. "Our system protected banking transactions for millions of dollars, and she was talking about influencers. You have until the end of the day to clean your desk," Richard said. "Human resources has your settlement ready." While they were leaving, I heard Danielle say, "You wear your clothes, Daddy. They're a little unprofessional. This office needs class." I dropped into my chair, processing what had just happened. Maria entered running. "Carmen, the team is furious. Jorge and Anna already threatened to quit. Tell them not to do anything," I still responded, opening the drawer at the bottom of my desk. "But Carmen, they can't practically do this to you." "Maria," I interrupted her, taking out a folder. "Do you remember when I asked you to keep these documents? 2 years ago?" "Yes." She nodded. "After the death of Don Alberto Johnson, Richard's father and the founder of the company. A true technology genius who saw potential in me when no one else did." "It's time to open them," I said, breaking the seal. Maria gasped when she saw the content. "That's it," I answered, a smile forming on my face. The last play of Don Alberto. At that moment, Laura, from the legal department, appeared. Carmen, Richard called an emergency meeting of the board of directors. To announce the perfect changes just in time, I said, standing up. Just in time for what? Maria asked. To reveal who is the true owner of Global Technology, Inc. The meeting room was full when I entered. Those from the directory, all of Richard's old friends, were talking animatedly at the head of the table. Danielle had already settled in my chair, fiddling with her phone. Ah, Carmen, Richard said with false kindness. You didn't need to come. Human Resources can send you the documents by mail. I wouldn't miss this meeting for anything, I responded, standing next to the door. Maria entered behind me, carrying a box that looked like it contained my office belongings. It actually contained copies of all the documents we needed. Well, Richard began, I've gathered you all together to announce some exciting changes. My daughter Danielle. Before continuing, I interrupted. Could we review the minutes from the last meeting of the founding council? Richard frowned. Not relevant now. Oh, but it is, I said, while Maria distributed folders to each board member. Especially the meeting of March 15th, 2 years ago. What is this? Asked one of the directors, opening their folder. The last will of Don Alberto Johnson, I responded. And the true ownership documents of Global Technology. Richard became pale. That is confidential, he said. As legal director, Laura intervened. I must point out that these documents are legitimate and are duly registered. What's happening, Daddy? Danielle asked, finally turning away from her phone. Don Alberto, I continued, knew that his son had different priorities for the company. That's why, before he died, he transferred 60% of the shares to a trust. That's impossible. Richard shouted, I inherited everything. You inherited 30%. Corrected Laura. The rest was in the trust, which would be activated. Under certain conditions. What conditions? Asked one of the directors. I took out a letter from my folder. Don Alberto left specific instructions. The trust will be transferred to the person who meets 3 requirements. To demonstrate innovation, maintain the original vision of the company, and protect employees. From arbitrary decisions, this is ridiculous, he exclaimed. And who supposedly has those shares? I responded simply, I do. Chaos exploded in the room. Ricardo stood up with a jump, his face red with anger. You lie. My father never told me. Your father, I personally interrupted. The night before he died, he called me to his house. The room was silent as I remembered that conversation. I have seen how you work, as you care not only for the code but for the people. Ricardo, he sees numbers on a screen. You see lives to protect. Why do you tell me? I had asked him. 'Cause someone has to protect my legacy. Not only software, but the spirit of innovation and care that we built. I returned to the present. Don Alberto knew that this day would arrive. That's why he prepared. Everything legally, it doesn't matter. Daniela intervened. Daddy continues being the CEO about that. Laura said, taking out more documents. According to the statutes of the company, any major executive decision requires the approval of the majority shareholder. Like the dismissal of key executives, Ricardo added. I collapsed in my chair. You can't do this, I protested. Do what? Protect the company, defend our employees, maintain the quality standards that made us leaders in the market. At that moment, my phone vibrated. It was a message from Jorge, our development boss. Daniela has just given complete access to the tech source. Code to your boyfriend, an influencer. Says he wants me to review it to modernize it. I showed the message to Laura, who nodded gravely. Gentlemen directors, I announced, we have a safety emergency. Someone without authorization has accessed our code. Owner just wanted a second opinion. Protested Daniela of an influencer from TikTok for a system that protects banking transactions. The international directors began to murmur among themselves. Ricardo looked like he was going to faint. This is ridiculous, said Daniela, standing up. I'm going to have lunch. When I get back, I want my office ready. You are not going anywhere. Laura interrupted her. Nowhere. This could constitute a crime. Corporate crime, screeched Daniela. Daddy, do something, but Ricardo was busy reading the documents, his face becoming paler and paler. There is more, I said, taking out the last folder. Don Alberto left something especially for today. What else? Ricardo asked weakly. It's a complete audit of all corporate decisions of the last 2 years, I responded, including certain financial movements. The silence in the room grew deafening as Laura projected the results of the audit on the screen. As you can see, she explained, during the last 2 years, funds have been diverted from development to an account in the Cayman Islands. That is confidential information, Ricardo protested weakly. The $50 million that you diverted for your company, yacht are also confidential, I asked, or the private jet that you bought in the name of a subsidiary. The directors murmured among themselves, reviewing the documents with growing concern. And that's not all, Laura continued. The unauthorized access to the TechShield source code could violate various contracts with our banking clients. At that time, Jorge ran into the room. We have a problem. The influencer has already published part of the code on his channel. Technology. Says he wants to demonstrate the flaws of the outdated system. Daniela sank into her chair. He just wanted to help my boyfriend get more followers. More followers. I repeated, incredulous. You just exposed the security system that protects millions in banking transactions. Gentlemen, one of the older directors said, this is impossible. I propose an immediate vote to reorganize the company leadership. Ricardo. Suso standing, you are the CEO, I corrected. The board can vote on your dismissal with justified cause. And I think embezzlement of funds and exposure of intellectual property qualify as cause. You can't do this to me, screamed Ricardo. This company is my inheritance. No, Ricardo, I said softly. It is the legacy of Don Alberto. A legacy that you swore to protect and that, instead, you have looted to maintain your lifestyle. Maria, the lawyers of 3 banks are already online. They want explanations about the leak of the code, and I want explanations about these expenses, added the financial director, pointing at the screen. Villa and Marbella for retreats. Ricardo collapsed in his chair. Daniela began to cry. The vote is unanimous, announced the board president. Ricardo Mendoza is dismissed as effective CEO. Carmen immediately said Laura as majority shareholder, and the person the board knows understands our systems best. Suggests that you take the position temporarily while we manage this crisis. I approached the window, walking through the building that Don Alberto had built from zero. I remembered his words. The power is not to dominate Carmen, it's to protect. I accept, I responded, but with conditions. What conditions? Asked the president. We will first implement a corporate governance system, transparent. Second, we will create a fund for innovation for employees with valuable ideas. And third, I turned to Ricardo and Daniela. We will give them a chance to do things right. What do you mean? Ricardo asked. We won't press criminal charges if you return all the funds. You embezzled. You will be able to keep a small percentage of shares without the power of decision. And Daniela, she murmured between tears. She will start from below, like I trained in development. Yes, really? You want to be in this industry? You'll learn how it works from the foundation. 6 months later, the development room was full of energy. In a corner, Daniela, now without makeup and wearing more practical clothes, discussed algorithms with Jorge. It turns out that when given the opportunity, she really has talent for programming. Ricardo returned most of the funds and now works as an external consultant, learning to respect the limits and technical procedures. The team is in development with new security measures and a more diverse team committed to the work. The banks renewed their trust in us after seeing how we handled the crisis. In my new office, which I kept simple, just like Don Alberto would have liked, I have 2 photos. One with the original development team and another from Don Alberto on the day he promoted me to project leader. Power is not to dominate. It is to protect, says the framed photo. Maria enters with the day's agenda of innovation for employees. Already has 20 proposals, she announces, smiling. You know, I say Don Alberto would be proud, wouldn't he? We only saved the company. We did it better. She knew it, Maria answers. That's why he chose you. On my screen, an email from Daniela flashes. Can we check my proposal to improve the security of the banking module? I think I've found a way to make it more efficient. I smile as I answer, of course, in the development room, as always. Because in the end, true power is not in a title or an office. It is in creating something that helps others. In building instead of destroying, leading by example rather than by fear. Don Alberto knew it. Now everyone knows it too.